Minister, your colleague Joan Burton has called on government to review contact with Mr Denis O'Brien, and I believe that Minister Lucinda Creighton shares those concerns. In fact, she was critical of his attendance at the Global Irish Economic Forum last October. Seems to me that the Taoiseach takes an entirely different view, beaming as he was from a photograph with the same individual. So can I ask you, Minister, to set out your position on this matter and the position of government?
Let me say that from my own personal perspective, I think there is a consequence, there should be a consequence, for those well-known people or not against whom adverse findings are adduced by a tribunal of inquiry. That's my view, and I think it's an important point to bear in mind. In relation to the specific point the Deputy raised, the Taoiseach was invited, didn't issue invitations. He was invited to a particular function. Others were also invited. None of us can control the people that are photographed with us. In relation to the invitation to the Global Forum, the invitations that went out replicated those that were invited to the first forum, and that's what happened. There were adverse comments in relation to the attendance.
Sorry, would you please?
There were adverse comments, Ceann Comhairle, in relation to the attendance of Mr O'Brien, and we don't have to reflect on that. We don't have to reflect on that. I saw the glad handling of the former leader of Fianna Fáil at a party conference. We'll see who now shuns them. We all have to make personal decisions, and the government has to make its decisions in relation to any individual against whom adverse findings are made by a tribunal established by this House. And I agree with the Deputy in that regard.
Well, that answer isn't clear at all. You say that there should be consequences, for people against whom adverse findings are made. You say that the government has to take a decision. What is that decision? It strikes me, after a week spent debating Mahon, that the government is rather ambivalent or confused, or maybe even compromised in terms of its position around genuine consequences and genuine reform. So tell us very clearly, what's the government view of contact with Mr O'Brien? Or do you have a division on this matter? And can I say furthermore that the fiasco around Phil Hogan, not just around the household charge, but shutting down legitimate inquiries into planning issues across local authorities is a further
Deputy,
ambivalence.
we only can leave with one topic. You're replying, you have a minute and you're over time.
So the question is, what's the position? Tell us plainly, what is the position of government in respect of Mr Denis O'Brien?
Let me first answer the first question you talk about, our reaction to the Mahon Tribunal.
Sorry, we won't. That's a separate issue entirely. We're talking about Mr O'Brien, full stop.
Well, I understood it was the adverse findings in relation to the Moriarty Tribunal and the Mahon Tribunal, and how we deal with people against whom adverse findings have been made. But I will obviously...
You understand my position?
I do indeed, Ceann Comhairle. But when I hear a scattergun of questions, we'd like to answer them. I've said to you the view I've outlined in relation to Mr O'Brien, and my view in relation to anybody against whom serious adverse findings have been arrived at by a tribunal of inquiry. That is the view. I have to tell you honestly, we haven't discussed a list of people to be shunned, if that's what you're asking for, at Cabinet, but that hasn't arisen. But if issues like this, in terms of future invitations are to be issued, I'm sure those matters will be discussed at Cabinet.